This question is, to what extent is there a typical criminal? It's got the word extent. It tells me it's a debate. Debates are extent, may, view, or it's a statement. So for example, there is a typical criminal, discuss. It's a debate because, as I've said, it's got the word extent. With a debate, we do insert table. We do 3 paragraphs for, 3 paragraphs against. To what extent is there a typical criminal? The official crime statistics suggest that a typical criminal, so the official crime statistics suggest that a typical criminal is young, male, working class, and disproportionately black. The official crime statistics is what suggests there's a typical criminal, and they appear to be young, male, working class, and disproportionately black. This might be the result of blocked opportunities. However, in order for a crime to appear, in order for a crime to actually appear, it has to be reported. However, for a crime to appear, it has to be reported, recorded by police, and get a conviction. Okay. Typical criminal comes from the official crime statistics. This paragraph is going to be working class. So I always start off with a debate. It doesn't tell me, it tells me it's a debate, but it doesn't tell me what grid it is. So it doesn't tell me functionalism or Marxism. When it does one like this, in my mind, I always start off with functionalism. I work my way back through. So do functionalism, Marxism, and keep going. And I think, well, functionalists suggest a typical criminal is working class. Functionalists suggest there is a typical criminal, and they are working class. My 3 most useful functionalists. So I'm going to do Merton. Durkheim and Hershey don't really work, but Merton altered anime to mean a society, or it altered anime to mean a disjunction between goals and means. He altered anime to mean a disjunction between goals and means. There is a tremendous cultural stress. There is a tremendous cultural stress on material goals or the American dream. There is a tremendous cultural stress on material goals or the American dream, but the majority lack. There is a tremendous stress on material goals or the American dream, but the majority lack the practical means. they experience blocked opportunities. But the majority lack practical means they experience blocked opportunities. Crime is innovation. Merton? I think Albert Cohen. Also blocked opportunities, and the working class are blocked from status. For Albert Cohen, when working class groups are unable to achieve consensus goals, when working class groups are unable to achieve consensus goals of status in education, when working class groups are unable to achieve consensus goals of status in education, due to blocked opportunities, they become aware. So when unable to achieve their consensus goals of status in education due to blocked opportunities, they become aware, leading to a reaction formation and the creation of a subculture. And a creation of a subculture. Creation of a subculture where status is awarded. It's a question. Criminal crime. Status is awarded by criminal or deviant acts. Merton, Albert Cohen, Cloud and Oland. 3 sociologists is always our aim in a debate. Cloud and Oland, working class communities. The Cloud and Oland, working class communities experience blocked opportunities from money and status. Working class communities experience blocked opportunities from money and status and have created an illegitimate career structure criminal, violent, and retreatist. Criminal, violent, and retreatist. Blocked opportunities explains different. Blocked opportunities in these subcultures explains different types of crime. Blocked opportunities within these subcultures explains different types of crime. So I've got 3 sociologists and my theme is blocked opportunities. I'm going to read the question. To what extent is there a typical criminal? This shows there is a typical criminal. There is a typical criminal. This shows there is a typical criminal. And they are working class. This shows there is a typical criminal and they are working class. This is the result of blocked opportunities from money and status. There is a typical criminal and they're working class. This is the result of blocked opportunities from money and status, and working class groups innovate to achieve these goals via alternative criminal means. There is a typical criminal, and that typical criminal is working class because they experience blocked opportunities and therefore they innovate to achieve these. However, for Claire Valier, so I just try and find a good named evaluation that will apply to all. However, for Claire Valier, they are wrong to assume shared goals within society. However, for Claire Valliere, these sociologists are wrong to assume shared goals. And therefore, a typical criminal, come back to the question, a typical criminal is unlikely. You get marks for the evaluation coming back to the terms of the question as well. Functionalist paragraph done, all blue. Then I go to Marxists. Marxists, I see Crowell, Snyder, and those traditional Marxists. So I'm now in the red grid because I'm working my way through each one. Traditional Marxists suggests there is not a typical criminal. The traditional Marxists suggest there's not a typical criminal. For Crowell, corporate crime is softened. For Crowell, corporate crime is softened with language like cons, rip-offs, and fiddles. For Crowell, corporate crime is softened through a language like cons, rip-offs, and fiddles. For Snyder, the most serious acts of crime are committed by large corporations. For Snyder, the most serious acts of crime are committed by large corporations, both in terms of finance and loss of life. And my third Marxist, I'm going to do Sutherland. So he studied 70 large corporations and found laws were frequently violated but rarely prosecuted. So simply invisible. People were unaware they were victims. Crowell, Snyder, Sutherland. This shows there is not a typical criminal. This shows there is not a typical criminal. And in actual fact, the most serious acts of crime are committed by corporations. There's not a typical criminal. And in actual fact, the most serious acts of crime are committed by corporations. However, these crimes are not reported or recorded, as victims are unaware. There isn't a typical criminal. Most corporations, or most serious acts of crime, are committed by corporations. These crimes just aren't reported because people are unaware that they're victims of crime. However, this is a tricky one. However, for Carlin, to make this fit in there a bit better, however, for Carlin, there is no discussion of patriarchy. There is no discussion of patriarchy. and any consideration of why typical criminals appear to be male. However, for Carlin, there's no discussion of patriarchy, and any consideration of why typical criminals appear to be male. For Heidenson, you could just really do Heidenson. This reflects male stream. Theory from Marxism. I've come away from the question a little bit because I'm criticising them for being male stream, but I need to tie it into the question. So there's no discussion of them from them for why the typical criminal appears to be male. I get that the typical criminal appears to be working class because we're not reporting their crime of corporations, but there's no discussion for why the typical criminal appears to be male. For Heidenson, this reflects male stream theory from Marxism and kind of a sole focus on class. I can't see gender, I can only see class. Okay, so you got to tie it in to get the A or the A star, tie the evaluation back to the question. Okay, I'm still on Marxism because when I'm recalling the Marxist grid, I think that subcultural Marxism does actually suggest there's a typical criminal. So I'm going to do blue here, red here, and I'm going to do another Marxism paragraph. So for subcultural Marxists, there is a typical criminal and they're young. For subcultural Marxists, there is a typical criminal and they are young. For subcultural Marxists, there's a typical criminal and they're young. The CCCS argued that capitalism maintains control. The CCCS argued that capitalism maintains control via ideological dominance and economic pressures. Capitalism maintains control via ideological dominance and economic pressures. The young are not locked into the system yet. Ideological dominance and economic pressures. The young are not locked into the system yet. For Hall and Jefferson, young subcultures can resist the dominant culture. Young subcultures can resist the dominant culture. And a crisis of capitalism. High unemployment, low wages. For Brake, subcultures are a magical solution. Magical response. And allow freedom and optimism that things could change. And for Phil Cohen, they are a symbolic solution. And for Cohen, they are a symbolic solution to diminished employment prospects. They are a symbolic solution to diminished employment prospects and decline of the working class community. Okay. Free sociologists, much shorter. This shows The typical criminal is young. This shows the typical criminal is young. This group can commit crime because they are not locked into capitalism. Typical criminal is young. This group can commit crime because they're not locked into capitalism. They can resist this system and commit crime as they have nothing to lose yet. Definitely young. They're not locked in yet. They can resist the system as they have nothing to lose yet. However, for Maffei Solly, this theory is out of date. For Maffei Solly, this theory is out of date. We no longer have subcultures. For Maffei Solly, it's out of date. We no longer have subcultures. The new working class are pro-capitalism. I'm adding a little bit from core there in my own kind of knowledge. But the new working class are pro-capitalism. We now have neo-tribes. It's out of date. He notes we no longer have subcultures. We have neo-tribes. But I'd get you to note, folks, the new working class are pro-capitalism. They would sell off the NHS if it would benefit them. They're pro-capitalism and they're very individualistic. Therefore, a typical criminal is unlikely. See how we're trying to tie the evaluation, the AO3, back to the question because we want an A star or an A. Okay, typical criminal is working class. No, they're not. Typical criminal is young. I'm done with Marxism now. The next grid we did was interactionism, was yellow. Definitely suggests there's not a typical criminal. I think some still up there. There we go. So, interactionist theory suggests there is not a typical criminal. Interactionist theory suggests there's not a typical criminal. For Becker, an individual is labelled. For Becker, an individual is labelled. They internalise or accept. For Becker, an individual is labelled. Confusing it with education. It becomes labelled. It becomes master status. And leads to a deviant career or reoffending. Individual is labelled. It becomes their master status. Sorry, they are excluded and it leads to a deviant career or reoffending. I knew I missed one, there's 4. For Lemmet, there is primary deviance, which is the act, and secondary, which is the social reaction. And for Cicero, please share a collective, stereotypical view. Please share a collective stereotypical view of who constitutes a criminal. This undermines the ability of such groups to negotiate. Undermines the ability of such groups to be able to negotiate. These are basically my 3 favourite sociologists from each grid, and they're my favourite because they're the ones I find are the most useful, that you absolutely must know, because they are used time and time again in a debate. This shows, question, don't want to come away from it, this shows there is not a typical criminal. This shows there is not a typical criminal. Everyone commits crime. Everyone commits crime, but cultural capital means some groups can negotiate out of their crimes being reported or convicted. Everyone commits crime. But if you've got cultural capital, so I appreciate I'm borrowing a little bit there from Chambliss, you can negotiate, even though he's not in that section, doesn't matter. Okay, functionalism done, Marxism, interactionism. Right realism isn't my favourite. I don't think it's that clear or applies to the question that easily. There's only really Murray. So I've done typical criminal is definitely working class. That's done. I have done young, not male yet. I'm going to go to ethnicity next. So right realism, no. I don't think it links as well. It's only the underclass, which is one person. So I'm going to go left realism and ethnicity. So for left realists, a typical criminal, be careful with your language, might be disproportionately black. For left realism, a typical criminal, be careful, might be disproportionately likely to be black. Crime is the result of marginalization. No, I'm going to do it in the order. Result of subcultures. So blocked opportunities. Marginalization. Why do I like it in a bit of an order? Subcultures, blocked opportunities. Relative deprivation. So being aware. And marginalization or exclusion via stop and search. Crime is a result of marginalization, relative deprivation, and subcultures. For Nightingale, US black youth have extremely strong consumerist values and desire high status. Again, that might be because those opportunities have been blocked for hundreds of years. But for Nightingale, US black youth have extremely strong consumerist values and desire high status, but experience blocked opportunities due to racism. And a third sociologist that argues black groups might be more criminal is Gilroy. So for Gilroy, crime by ethnic minorities is a political act fighting back against a racist capitalist system. Younger Gilroy, don't have to say it's younger. Remember, he can explain the rise of Rastafarianism in the 1980s, which definitely is pushing as an anti-colonial struggle, pushing back against the kind of Yeah, colonial empires. Right. However, no, this shows a typical criminal might be disproportionately black. This shows a typical criminal might be disproportionately black. This could be the result of racism from police and wider society. It might be that crime is disproportionately black because of racism from police and wider society, transferring this frustration into crime. It's racism from police and racism from society for Lear and Young that manifests itself and transfers it, all that frustration and blocked opportunities, into more crime potentially. However, Gilroy denounces black criminality. Gilroy later denounces black criminality as a myth. He later denounces black criminality as a myth. This idea of a typical criminal being black, see how I'm using the term of the question, this whole idea of a typical criminal being black is used to justify saturation policing. He doesn't say typical criminal, but it's inferred. It's just used to justify saturation policing. It's a myth. Okay, I'm going to do an ethnicity paragraph against, because there's another whole section of that ethnicity grid that suggests absolutely not. There's no typical criminal. There's a criminal justice system that's discriminatory. So, however, a typical criminal is not disproportionately black. So remember I said to you, only about 4% of the population self-identify as black, but the prison population is 7 times higher. So only makes up about, black populations only make up about 28% of the prison population, which is obviously a very small amount, but it's disproportionately higher because there should only be about 4% in the prison population of that community. A typical criminal is not disproportionately black. So, for Bowling and Phillips, that's what we mean by disproportionate, higher than you'd expect. For Bowling and Phillips, there is direct and indirect discrimination within the criminal justice system. For Bowling and Phillips, there is both direct and indirect discrimination in the criminal justice system. Black offenders are more likely to be remanded in custody before and during a trial. So if black offenders are much more likely to be remanded in custody before and during a trial, if subsequently found guilty, these groups receive longer prison sentences, and actually are more likely to get prison sentences than white groups because their community was remanded in custody before and during a trial. For Reiner, canteen culture, For Reiner, canteen culture is an occupational culture. Is an occupational culture that pervades the police force. Is an occupational culture that pervades the police force. It's characterized by racism, macho values, and sexism. Sexism characterized by racism, macho values, and sexism. Bowling and Phillips, Reiner. And for Smith, Gray, and Holdaway, all found police accepted the existence of black criminality. All found that the police accepted the existence of black criminality, were unapologetic, and used colour as a criteria for stops. 3 sociologists. We push for 3 in each paragraph and we push for 6. We can't quite do 6 if we can do 5, but we've got 3 in each paragraph, or worst possible case scenario, 4 paragraphs with 3 sociologists in each. You've still given the examiner a huge amount of range, and we just want them to think, I can't not give them top band because you've got so much range. This shows a typical criminal is not disproportionately black. This shows a typical criminal is not disproportionately black. The criminal justice system is institutionally racist. The typical criminal is not disproportionately black. The criminal justice system is institutionally racist. The policies, procedures, and practices discriminate. Criminal justice system is institutionally racist. The policies, procedures, and practices discriminate. And therefore makes it appear as if there is a typical criminal who is black. It only appears that way because we're more likely to remand black men in custody, so they're more likely to then go to prison compared with white groups. However, the Mayhew et al. Crime could be the result of blocked opportunities. However, for Mayhew, Piper, and Wave, could be the result of blocked opportunities. So as a result of blocked opportunities. Now that feels a little bit samey with some paragraphs. So I'm going to put and for Hall et al. Crime might be the result. And for Hall et al., crime also might be the result of needing to survive. Crime might be the result of needing to survive. By a reserved army. Feels like otherwise blocked opportunities is really commonly a theme, just so you know. So just think, okay, a little bit of Hall et al. Might be the result. Might be blocked opportunities, and could be a survival strategy by a reserved army of labour. and therefore there could be atypical criminal. Okay, didn't get to gender. Could do gender. Yep, typical criminal is male. No, typical criminal isn't due to criminal justice system. You could do gender here as well, to be fair. Going to do my conclusion. Okay, so to conclude, crime, or to conclude, do I think there's a typical criminal? This is hard. Do I think there's a typical criminal? Don't like to sit on the fence. To conclude, there could be a typical criminal which is the result of blocked opportunities. There could be a typical criminal which is the result of blocked opportunities in society. Blocked from material goals, status, and even hegemonic masculinity. I know I didn't get to gender, but I've no reason why I can't discuss it in a conclusion. Look, there could be a typical criminal, which could be the result of being blocked from material goals, status, and even a hegemonic masculine identity or hegemonic masculinity. However, this idea of a typical criminal comes from crime statistics. It comes from crime statistics. And a huge amount of crime is not reported, recorded, or convicted. It appears we need to move away. It appears we need to move away from the idea of a typical criminal and look at the crimes of elites. We need to kind of move away from this whole idea of a typical criminal and look at crimes of the elites and corporations and why governments are reluctant to pass laws that threaten, and why governments are reluctant to pass laws that threaten profits and should be criminal. I knew I was missing one of my favourite Marxists. So, look, might be typical criminal because of blocked opportunities, but we really need to move away from this idea of a typical criminal and look at the crimes of the elites and corporations and why governments are reluctant to pass laws that threaten their profits and that should be criminal. That's my conclusion. Could be, but I think we should be paying much more attention to this Marxist idea of the most harmful acts not being criminal. Okay. Any questions? Let me know.